Here's the truth nobody tells seniors: decluttering can actually ruin your life if you toss the wrong things. The danger isn't in what you keep, it's in what you let go too quickly. Because once those items are gone, they can't be bought back at any store, and the regret can linger for years. Many people over 60 think they are finally freeing themselves when they downsize, only to realize later that they've lost something irreplaceable. That's why, before you carry that next donation box to the curb, I want you to pause and really think about what's inside. Today, I'll show you 7 surprising things you should never throw away after 60. These aren't the obvious keep for sentimental value items. These are practical, life-saving, and identity-shaping things that most people don't realize they'll miss until it's too late. And number 2? Almost every senior regrets losing it, yet it's one of the first things to end up in donation bins when we're trying to clear space. That's the trap of decluttering. It convinces us that less is always better, when in reality, keeping the right items is just as important as letting go of the wrong ones. If you're over 60 and want to declutter without regrets, hit subscribe now to Wise Aging Seniors. This is advice you won't hear anywhere else, and it may be the difference between a home that feels safe and alive, and a home filled with loss you didn't see coming. Lorinda Cole is 71 years old, a retired florist who spent most of her life in a small town in Texas. For decades, her days were filled with the fragrance of roses, lilies, and wildflowers. Her little shop was more than a business. It was her sanctuary, a place where she brought joy to brides, comfort to grieving families, and beauty to everyday lives. When her husband passed away, the quiet that followed was deafening. Suddenly, the home they had shared for 4 to 5 years felt too big, too heavy with memories, and too full of things that seemed to belong to another lifetime. Like many seniors, Lorinda believed the answer was to downsize, to declutter, to strip away the excess until her surroundings felt manageable again. At first, the process felt liberating. She filled boxes with clothes she no longer wore, kitchen gadgets she hadn't touched in years, and stacks of magazines that only collected dust. With each load taken to the donation center, she told herself she was freeing her home and her heart. But then came a moment she hadn't expected. One afternoon, she held her late husband's old gardening hat, frayed at the brim and stained from summers spent tending their backyard. Her first instinct was to toss it. After all, it was worn, and she had no practical use for it anymore. Yet, something inside her hesitated. That hat wasn't just fabric. It carried the story of the man she loved, the life they built together, and the afternoons they shared planting marigolds and tulips side by side. This was the turning point for Lorinda. She realized decluttering wasn't only about clearing space, it was about protecting what still held meaning, what still provided comfort, and what still anchored her sense of identity. In her rush to simplify, she nearly let go of items that quietly safeguarded her health, her safety, and her story. And she's not alone. Many seniors across America face the same choice, deciding what is clutter and what is, in fact, the thread that keeps their lives intact. Through her journey, Lorinda discovered that the things we're most tempted to throw away often hold the greatest value, not in dollars, but in the way they keep us grounded, independent, and connected to the people we've been and the people we still want to be. Her story will weave through each of the 7 items we'll discuss, showing not only what she kept, but why keeping them made her life lighter without erasing what truly mattered. Item 1. Comfort clothing with function. When most people think about decluttering clothing after 60, they imagine clearing out closets full of sweaters, dresses, and shoes they rarely wear anymore. And it's true, streamlining your wardrobe can feel freeing. But here's where many seniors make a painful mistake. They treat their functional comfort clothing as disposable simply because it isn't stylish or attractive. Compression socks, arthritis gloves, supportive sandals, or wide-brim sun hats don't usually look fashionable, but they quietly carry an invisible weight in our lives. They protect health, mobility, and confidence. Toss them too quickly, and the consequences can be felt in every step, every joint, and every outing. Take Lorinda, for example. During her downsizing, she came across a pair of beige arthritis gloves tucked away in her nightstand. They weren't pretty. In fact, she thought they looked clunky and made her hands appear older. Her instinct was to toss them in the donation pile. No one would miss these, she thought. But the very next week, while working in her small garden, her hands began to ache and swell. She remembered those gloves, slipped them back on, and suddenly realized their value. With them, she could plant marigolds and water her tomatoes without sharp pain shooting through her fingers. Without them, gardening, one of her life's passions, would have slowly slipped away. That moment shifted her thinking. Some clothing isn't about fashion, it's about freedom. This is where so many seniors across America go wrong. They see compression socks as ugly, when in reality they protect circulation, prevent swelling, and lower the risk of dangerous blood clots. They see wide-brim hats as old-fashioned, yet those hats guard skin from harmful UV rays that can cause cancer. They see arthritis gloves as clumsy, but those gloves keep joints moving and hobbies alive. The truth is, these items don't belong in the clutter category. They belong in the lifeline category. So before you bag up clothing to donate, ask yourself, does this piece serve my health? Does it keep me moving, safe, or independent? If the answer is yes, it's not clutter, it's protection. Imagine the frustration of buying a new pair of trendy shoes that look wonderful but leave you limping after 15 minutes, while the older, ugly pair you gave away was the only one that truly supported your balance. That's a regret you can't undo. Have you ever regretted giving away something that turned out to protect your health? Tell us in the comments, because your story might help another senior rethink what they're about to let go of. Item 2. Sturdy food prep items. When decluttering the kitchen after 60, many people believe the key is to pare down to the sleekest, most modern gadgets. The air fryer, the electric can opener, the single-serve coffee machine, all of these promise convenience and less effort. In that process, older, sturdy items are often labeled as junk or duplicates and quickly tossed or donated. But here's the truth. Those heavy, durable, manual tools can be the very difference between going hungry and staying nourished when life doesn't go as planned. Lorinda learned this lesson during a brutal Texas blackout. 4 days, her neighborhood lost power. Grocery stores were shut, fridges and freezers defrosted, and neighbors who relied on electric gadgets suddenly found themselves unable to perform the simplest tasks. One woman down the street couldn't open canned food because her electric can opener was useless without power. Others threw away spoiled freezer meals because they had no reliable backup plan. But in Lorinda's kitchen sat her old hand crank can opener, one she had nearly donated months earlier because it seemed outdated. With that small, sturdy tool, she was able to open canned vegetables, soups, and beans that kept her going when others were struggling. That simple device reminded her that practicality often outlives technology. The same applies to other sturdy but unfashionable items. Cast iron pans, which many dismiss as heavy and old-fashioned, can last lifetimes and cook evenly even over an outdoor fire. Thermoses, often tossed in favor of disposable cups, keep drinks hot or cold for hours, priceless during long doctor visits, road trips, or emergencies. A basic water filter, ignored in favor of bottled water, can make the difference when storms disrupt city water supplies. These aren't luxury tools, they are survival anchors hidden in plain sight. Too many seniors across America regret giving up these kitchen workhorses. They're not just relics of the past, they're insurance against uncertainty. Tossing them may feel like clearing clutter, but what you're really doing is removing a safety net you may desperately need later. The convenience of gadgets is wonderful when life runs smoothly, but when the power goes out, when storms hit, or when money is tight, it's the sturdy, simple items that rise to the occasion. But the next item seems so ordinary that most seniors declutter it without thinking, until the day comes when they realize they needed it most. Item 3. Seasonal and emergency essentials. When most people declutter after 60, they look at bulky seasonal items, heavy boots, thick blankets, storm lanterns, or even that old generator, and convince themselves these things take up too much space. I never use it, they say, or if I need one again, I can always buy another. But the reality in the United States today is that climate extremes are no longer rare events. Hurricanes, wildfires, ice storms, heat waves, and blackouts hit harder and more frequently than ever before. What may look like clutter in the corner of your garage could actually be the very gear that keeps you safe, warm, and alive when the unexpected strikes. For Lorinda, the lesson became clear during one unforgettable Texas winter storm. The temperature plummeted, pipes froze, and electricity grids collapsed. Entire neighborhoods went dark, and seniors who had decluttered their old-fashioned emergency gear were left vulnerable. While others struggled to light candles or wrap themselves in thin throws, Lorinda reached for the storm lantern she had almost donated. With one strike of a match, her living room was filled with steady light that guided her through 3 long nights without power. She bundled herself in a thick blanket her husband once used for camping, and that simple choice, keeping what she thought was excess, made her home bearable in a time of crisis. These essentials don't seem glamorous. A pair of waterproof boots might sit untouched for months. A generator might gather dust in the shed. A stack of wool blankets may look like wasted closet space. But when floodwaters rise, when the snow traps you indoors, or when the power grid falters, you'll realize they were never clutter at all, they were your backup plan. Seniors who declutter them often regret it most, because replacing them in an emergency is either impossible or painfully expensive. Think about it. How quickly would you recover from a 3-day outage without heat, light, or water? Could you walk through a flooded street without waterproof boots? Could you stay warm through an ice storm without heavy blankets? These aren't extra items. They're survival gear. Decluttering isn't just about creating space, it's about keeping the right things to ensure your safety and independence. The ordinary items you're tempted to get rid of today might be the very lifeline you'll thank yourself for tomorrow. Item 4. Well-fitted, trusted shoes. Shoes might seem like the most ordinary items in your closet, the kind of thing you replace without much thought. After all, who doesn't love a fresh new pair that looks sharp and clean? But for seniors, shoes are more than fashion, they are the foundation of independence. In the United States, 1 in 4 seniors experiences a fall every year, and falls remain one of the leading causes of injury after 60. That's why those broken-in, well-fitted shoes you've had for years aren't clutter, they're safety gear disguised as footwear. Tossing them too soon can be one of the costliest decluttering mistakes. When Lorinda downsized her home, she almost gave away her old pair of sneakers. They weren't pretty. The soles were scuffed, the laces were a little frayed, and she thought they looked worn out. Compared to the sleek new walking shoes she had recently bought, the older pair seemed unnecessary. But on a rainy afternoon, she quickly learned the difference. Heading out to water her garden, she slipped on her brand new shoes, only to feel the slick pavement slide under her feet. Alarmed, she switched back to her older sneakers, and immediately felt steady and secure. Those worn soles had molded perfectly to her stride, offering stability that no shiny new pair could match. In that moment, she realized she had nearly donated the very shoes that kept her safe. This is the mistake many seniors make. They think old means replaceable, forgetting that shoes are one of the few items that become more valuable with age, at least when they are broken in correctly and still provide support. Well-fitted shoes adapt to your gait, cushion your joints, and help prevent dangerous slips. And unlike dress shoes or high heels, these trusted pairs are meant for balance and protection. The truth is, decluttering isn't about tossing what looks old, it's about evaluating what still works for you. A sturdy pair of shoes that keeps you upright is worth far more than 3 pairs of stylish ones that pinch your toes or slide on smooth flooring. In fact, keeping at least 1 or 2 dependable pairs is like keeping a personal safety net right at your doorstep. So before you bag up your old sneakers or walking shoes for donation, ask yourself, are they still steady, comfortable, and dependable? If the answer is yes, they don't belong in the toss pile, they belong on your feet when it matters most. Because sometimes the simplest things, like a pair of well-worn shoes, are what stand between you and a fall that could change everything. Item 5. Independence tools. When seniors start decluttering, one of the first things they often get rid of are what they call ugly gadgets. Grabber sticks leaning in the corner, jar openers shoved in drawers, step stools tucked in closets, or non-slip mats scattered across the bathroom floor, all of them can feel like clutter. They don't look decorative, they don't feel glamorous, and sometimes they're a quiet reminder that our bodies don't move the way they once did. But here's the truth, these tools aren't clutter. They are anchors of independence. They're the difference between asking for help every single day and handling life on your own terms. Lorinda almost made this mistake. During her downsizing, she considered donating the jar opener she bought for $15 years earlier. It's silly to keep this, she thought. I can just ask my daughter to open jars when she visits. But one afternoon she was making stew, and the lid on a jar of tomatoes wouldn't budge. Instead of waiting or giving up, she reached for that little opener. In seconds, the jar was open, and dinner was on the stove. What seemed like a piece of junk suddenly became proof that she didn't need to surrender her independence to anyone, not even for something as small as cooking. That simple tool gave her confidence, and it reminded her that independence isn't about age, it's about preparation. And it's not just jar openers. Grabber sticks keep you from straining your back or risking a fall just to pick up laundry or reach for a can. Step stools with sturdy handles allow you to safely change a light bulb or reach a shelf without calling someone else. Non-slip mats can seem like eyesores until you realize they're preventing the very falls that hospitalize thousands of seniors every year. Each of these items takes up little space, yet they save energy, protect your body, and preserve your dignity. The mistake many seniors make is thinking independence tools represent weakness. In reality, they are proof of strength, because using the right tools lets you keep doing what you love on your own. Giving them away to declutter often means giving away your self-reliance piece by piece. And once independence slips away, it's incredibly hard to get it back. So before you dismiss these items as clutter, stop and ask yourself, how much would it mean to keep cooking, cleaning, or managing your own space without having to depend on others? For Lorinda, the answer was clear: that jar opener wasn't junk. It was freedom in her hands. Which independence tool has saved you the most frustration? Share it below, because your story might inspire another senior to hold on to the very thing that keeps them strong. Item 6. Hobbies and creative supplies, if passion still burns. One of the most confusing areas for seniors when decluttering is hobbies. For years, you may have collected knitting yarn, gardening tools, stacks of sketch pads, paintbrushes, or even a favorite instrument. And when the urge to simplify hits, it can be tempting to sweep all of it into a donation box with the thought, I don't use this anymore, it's just clutter. And in some cases, that's the right decision. If a hobby no longer brings you joy, if you know in your heart you're done with it, then letting it go can free up space for something new. But here's the important distinction. If your hobby still sparks joy, even in small doses, don't toss it. Creative supplies are not clutter, they are fuel for your brain, therapy for your spirit, and one of the strongest defenses against loneliness and decline. Countless studies show that seniors who keep creating, whether it's through art, music, gardening, or writing, stay sharper, happier, and more connected to others. These aren't just things taking up space. They are lifelines that keep your mind alive and your heart engaged. Lorinda nearly missed this. In her decluttering process, she thought about giving away her old flower pressing kit. The wooden press was worn, and she hadn't used it regularly in years. It seemed silly to keep it when she was trying to live with less. But one day, while sorting through a basket of dried wildflowers, she decided to press a few petals again, just to see. That one small act turned into something unexpected. Soon, she was making delicate pressed flower bookmarks for her grandchildren. They loved them, and suddenly, what she once called clutter became a bridge of joy between generations. Now, she uses that old kit not just for herself, but to create memories with her family. This is the key. Decluttering doesn't mean stripping away the things that bring you life. If your paints are dried up and you haven't touched them in 20 years, let them go. But if your guitar still calls to you, if your sewing machine still sparks ideas, if your garden tools make your fingers itch for soil, those aren't things to discard. They are investments in your well-being. Think of it this way, your hobbies aren't about perfection or productivity. They are about expression. They are about reminding yourself and your family that life after 60 isn't just about surviving. It's about creating. And once those supplies are gone, it's much harder to rekindle the habit. And our final item isn't about safety or health, it's about your family legacy. And once it's gone, it can never be replaced. Item 7. Family story objects, beyond photos. When people talk about what to save for the next generation, photos almost always come to mind. And yes, pictures matter, they freeze moments in time. But there are other items, often overlooked or dismissed as old junk, that carry just as much meaning, sometimes more. These are the everyday objects woven into your family's story: a hand-stitched quilt, a well-worn apron, a rocking chair, or the hammer your father used for decades in his shop. They don't just sit quietly in a box, they tell stories in ways a photograph never could. During her downsizing, Lorinda almost made a mistake she would have regretted forever. She picked up her mother's apron, soft and flour-dusted from years of baking bread and pies. To her, in that moment, it looked like nothing more than a stained piece of fabric, something no one would possibly want. She nearly placed it in a donation bag. But her granddaughter happened to stop by that day. When she saw the apron, her face lit up. "Grandma, that's the one I remember you wearing when you taught me how to roll cookies," she said. In that instant, Lorinda realized the apron wasn't just fabric, it was a bridge between generations. Today, her granddaughter treasures it as a piece of living history, something far more precious than a picture in a frame. This is the power of family story objects. A quilt passed down isn't just warmth, it's hundreds of hours of stitches made by hands that cared for you. A rocking chair isn't just wood, it's the rhythm of countless nights holding children and grandchildren. An old set of tools isn't clutter, they are fingerprints of hard work, lessons in resilience, and a connection to where you came from. These items remind us that we are part of a bigger story, and they give younger generations a tangible way to touch that history. In today's culture of minimalism, it's easy to label these things as unnecessary. But the truth is, when seniors give away or toss family story objects, what they are really discarding is legacy. You can't buy back your mother's quilt at the store. You can't replace the marks your father left on the handle of his hammer. Once they are gone forever. So when you're decluttering, pause before letting go of items tied to family history. Ask yourself, does this object carry a story? Will someone in my family one day treasure it, not for its monetary value, but for the way it connects them to me? If the answer is yes, then it's not clutter, it's inheritance. Decluttering wisely isn't about stripping away every extra object. It's about protecting the anchors of your identity, your family's heritage, and the stories that will outlive you. Those items, humble as they may be, are irreplaceable. When Lorinda finally stepped back and looked at her home, she noticed something remarkable. The piles of unused clutter were gone. Her rooms felt brighter, easier to move through, and less overwhelming. But unlike many people who declutter and then feel a hollow sense of loss, Lorinda's home still felt alive. That's because she hadn't stripped it bare, she had carefully chosen to keep the items that truly mattered. Her home was lighter, yes, but it still carried warmth, memory, and safety. Every object she kept had a purpose, whether it was protecting her health, keeping her independent, or reminding her family of the story they all shared. This is the difference between ordinary decluttering and wise decluttering after 60. Anyone can throw things away, but it takes discernment to know what should stay. Too often, seniors are encouraged to cut down so aggressively that they end up losing the very items that make life manageable, joyful, or deeply meaningful. But as Lorinda discovered, it's not about having the least, it's about having the right things. That's where real peace of mind comes from. The quilt folded at the end of her bed reminded her of her mother's strength. The jar opener tucked in her kitchen drawer made her feel capable every time she cooked. The comfortable pair of shoes by the door gave her the confidence to step outside without fear. The pressed flower bookmarks she made for her grandchildren gave her joy and purpose. And the storm lantern sitting quietly on the shelf? It stood ready, a symbol of resilience, just in case life surprised her again. None of these items were clutter. They were anchors that allowed her to live fully, safely, and with dignity. This is the lesson for every senior. Decluttering after 60 isn't about erasing your past or emptying your home to the point of sterility. It's about protecting the items that keep you safe, independent, and connected to your story. Without those anchors, a home might look minimal, but it won't feel alive. With them, every corner reflects not just tidiness, but wisdom. If this gave you a fresh way to think about decluttering after 60, hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors. Because the smartest decluttering doesn't erase your life, it preserves what matters most, ensuring that your space reflects not just order, but the depth of who you are and the legacy you'll leave behind.